This is a spoiler review. Deal with it.
Crazy, right?
Okay, but why? Welcome, fans and friends, to another edition of me talking about a Netflix show no one's watching. But it has ships in it, so of course I am. Disenchantment, to most people, is Futurama but in the Middle Ages, and less funny. Which isn't completely wrong, but it's also the wrong way to look at it, as if you check out my other videos on the topic, this show is more of a coming-of-age tale for Bean, as we watch a depressed alcoholic grow into a functioning alcoholic who likes to kiss mermaids. But I won't lie though, the first 2 seasons of this show are a frustrating yo-yo between interesting and the status quo. Season 3 made some huge steps in giving us a more serialized narrative that could tell episodic adventures while still progressing the plot, building to a gut punch and an intense confrontation between Bean and her mother. While this season is more the same, just a little less focused. Still good though, because mermaids. Now this will be a spoiler review. Moving on, I liked this season. I like Disenchantment. It's not a consistent hard laugh for me, but it's got potential. The comedy can be clever, and the characters are likable.
Hi, I'm Elfo.
Most of the characters are likable. Full disclosure, I'm just gonna get a lot of my bitching out of the way early. The thing that really kept me from dropping the show was its willingness to make unexpected choices. Bean, our hero, chooses to let her best friend die to save her mother. And you just don't usually see that in most stories. They are so desperate to make sure that the hero does always the right thing, except for the one time where it's just really not their fault. But when they show that willingness to make those hard choices to let their main hero be selfish, I was hooked, as I just had to know where this story would go and where Bean fits into all these dark prophecies and deals. Now I'm 40 episodes in, and the big mystery surrounding the show has more than anything worn out its welcome. What started with Bean's mom making a deal with hell, and the mystery surrounding Bean's fate and prophecy have just kind of hit a dead end for me interest-wise. We spent the previous 2 seasons watching Dagmar claw to get Bean back for some deal with hell, only for Bean to weasel her way out of it and make Dagmar marry the devil himself. Only, shocker, this was all part of Dagmar's evil plan, just like it's always a part of Dagmar's evil plan. It's repetitive, and the reveal for every mystery feels like something that we've already known since last season, because we usually have. Dreamland originally being owned by the elves is a development, and the fact that Trogs are just Muon elves? Cool, I guess? But A, you can already kind of infer all of that, and B, they don't really do anything with it. The elves are jokes, who I feel nothing for. The fact that the castle used to belong to them doesn't really register besides whatever prophecy they're trying to set up with Bean. This isn't a Gravity Falls situation where the answer to a mystery leaves you with just more questions and a new mystery to unravel. Here, it's just a reveal and waiting to see how it will factor into the plot. And this to me is the biggest problem with Disenchantment. The disjointed pacing and focus have improved over time. Elfo isn't as terrible anymore, and overall the story has gotten better. But while I am invested in Bean's story, the actual plot and the machinations of the villains bore me. Bean gets an out-of-nowhere evil subconscious who becomes an evil twin after taking over her body, while Bean gets a new body then kills Bad Bean, who's still in her old body. Like, there's no lead up to this. There's no foreshadowing that this is something that can happen. And we don't have any idea why Lucy dragging Bean out of a dream can suddenly give her a new form. There's no real explanation for this. Oh, is this actually her subconscious, or is this some kind of creation implanted in her head by Dagmar? It just sort of happens, and the story is really banking on the audience being patient to see how the MILF is gonna use this severed head. And I feel like that is just what this show does constantly. The elves used to own Dreamland. Cool, how does this matter? Elfo's angry? Okay, it's playing off as a joke, completely swept under the rug. Okay, I guess I'll wait to see how this works out. Bean has powers? Oh, not really factoring. I guess I'll just wait to see how this plays out. It is just a constant string of waiting to see what will happen, as the mysteries and reveals don't really change much. It changes the trajectory of some subplots, but again, it doesn't really affect the main cast that we actually care about. It doesn't really change them or add any new conflict to their lives. And when it is, it's played as a joke. And because of the fact that they don't add any extra information, we can't really theorize where this will go from here. Your guess is as good as mine when it comes to a lot of what's going on. I have no fucking idea what Dagmar's plans are outside of using hell to get the magic. And the fact that we don't have that opportunity to theorize, come up with our own ideas, just creates for a very disengaged viewing experience. Like, maybe this is just my endless need to stretch out story for more content, but if a story doesn't give me enough information just to let me figure out, like, oh, where is this all headed? It doesn't even have to be really true, but if it doesn't give me that something, I am just going to sit there and let things happen. And not helping any of this is the fact that Dagmar is always being presented as this Palpatine-level planner who manipulated everything to get to this point. With her apparently needing Bean to be the Queen of Dreamland to marry her to Satan, which Bean wasn't till the end of season 3. In season 2, they're trying to marry her off, and not only does Bean pass the bullet to Dagmar, but when she does trick her mom into marrying the devil, she's not disturbed by it. In fact, she has this little smile like, oh, this was my plan all along, which is just, it's not interesting. It makes her seem less of a threat and more like she's playing the story on easy mode. It's basically the problem I had with Toffee in Star vs. the Force of Evil, where we have this master planner character who has all these machinations and he is so much smarter than everyone else. Only we don't know anything about him, we don't know what his actual plans are, so it's not that impactful when it does. And people's headcanons turn out to be way more interesting than anything that he ever does. We don't know what Dagmar's deal with hell is. We don't know why she needed Bean. Why is hell even involved in all this? All we got is that there is a magical MacGuffin beneath Dreamland that is definitely that crystal lake. We have no idea how these things will factor into one another. All I know is that it has been 40 episodes, and the questions I'm asking are the same ones that I had in season 2. Give or take a couple details. The show is at its best when it's telling a serialized story, but Dagmar, the magic, and whatever the hell that curse is, has zero hold over me. I am disengaged and I'm just waiting for the reveal whenever that happens. Thankfully, the rest of the show is pretty solid. Disenchantment is just my sense of humor. It's got jokes that don't land, but the ones that do always get a chuckle out of me. Won't lie though, not judging this show exclusively on its humor has definitely made me way less harsh on this one. I'm more into enjoying the characters and their chemistry, with the jokes just being more of a plus rather than the end-all be-all. This isn't Futurama. It's not just here to make you laugh. And this season really took that extra step into building up those characters. Zog got a lot of love this season as we watched him recover from his mental breakdown and learn more about how he became the sad, raging alcoholic we all know and tolerate. It explores his past, his insecurities, as he grew up being the unloved second in line to the throne, while also delving into his troubled romantic history, with us learning that Bean didn't just inherit his taste for beer, she also inherited his love of seafood. I know, that was terrible. I loved all the scenes that really dove into Zog's character. He isn't the character that I was clamoring to have more fleshed out, but it's still good stuff, and I'm not gonna turn that away. He got sent to an asylum, he became a monk, we even saw him reconnect with his third and last chance to be a good parent. And honestly, I think I would have been happy if he had just stayed in those woods with his bear son. Because my only complaint about Zog and all this fleshing out is how so much attention is put on him that I feel like it kind of starts to get in the way of the rest of the story. He's like 3, maybe you can argue 4 out of the 10 new episodes that we got center in some way around Zog, which leads to the other characters in the main plot not being able to feel like they're building up to anything substantial. Everyone gets back from hell, they take back their city, then it's an underwater adventure. Zog episodes, and whoop, that's the finale. Either they need to cut the sea trogs out, or Zog needs one less episode, or Zog's bear son needs to be done earlier in the show to give us more time to properly build up to this finale, because it does feel a little rushed. And I feel valid for arguing that we need a little bit less with Zog, because a lot of these episodes feels like they have 2 different episode ideas crammed into one. Like Zog goes to an asylum where he immediately starts talking again. No, sorry. We're now following Zog in his search for inner peace in a monastery. The stories aren't bad, but the ideas that I like aren't given enough time to breathe. I feel like if they just committed to the asylum, we wouldn't have needed the monastery. Because I do like Zog finding himself. I like him overcoming his trauma and to stop the goddamn honking. But he gets fixed in 10 minutes after a season of him being crazy and his situation being treated with a shocking level of seriousness. The moments work, but it doesn't feel fully earned, and that's because it feels so crammed together. And I do feel like this is a problem that carries over to a few of the episodes. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like there's a B plot and A plot in some of these stories. They both feel like they're fighting for attention, and I'm not sure which one is supposed to be more important. Leaving a lot of stuff to happen, but not a lot of it feels completely earned. But what has been earned, though, is Elfo being allowed to live. Elfo in the first 2 seasons was, in a word,
terrible.
Him simping for Bean was easily the worst thing about those early seasons. He was fine in the premiere, then immediately switched to being an entitled nice guy for the rest of the story. It was awful, and every time they bring up him having a thing for Bean, I want to die. Elfo as a character now is way more tolerable. Sassy Elfo is best Elfo, with him being just done with his dad, done with Lucy, done with a lot of these situations, and that is just perfect. Gone is a sickeningly sweet elf boy. Instead, we got a guy who's calling the people of Dreamland hicks, instigating race wars, and the little shit was all for looting the sea trog, so Bean has to be the voice of reason. It just makes Elfo more entertaining and gives the group a better dynamic. Because I know I talked about love triangles recently, but there's nothing worse than having a small group, liking them all together, and having that chemistry ruined by one of them deciding he desperately needs to be in another one's pants. I've seen way too many groups get screwed over by this, and I'm glad that they stopped doing it here. And even Elfo got more love as we find out more about his backstory. Elfo gets to meet his mother. Turns out, he's part ogre. And while Reddit very much spoiled this one for me, the backstory between the dad and mom was worth it. I kind of hate the dad. He's more of a dick and less of a funny dick to me, but this episode, prime. He was very entertaining, as Elfo is so thoroughly done with his shit that he is just making it so much better, bouncing off this abusive asshole. And speaking of people who I like, Jerry is also back in the show. And him and this simpleton trolling god was not only funny, but I was actually relieved to have him join the supporting cast because the guy's alive now, along with Lucy. I mean, this kind of also makes death mean nothing in this universe, but it's good to have them back. Don't understand how Lucy was able to be in heaven and talk to Bean, but let's just assume the timeline is screwy. I'm only half joking though, because the death thing really does remove a lot of tension in some scenes. The fact that we know that they can and just be brought back removes what little of my disbelief I'm willing to give in certain scenes. Like Bean nearly dies drowning. I mean, I think we all knew what was gonna happen. I mean, it was written all over the wall. But shit. But not only did I give up, but the show felt like it gave up when it came to even pretending that Ursula died. The Bear Woman's Disney death was so abrupt, with so little closure for her, that you just knew she wasn't dead, and she had less chance of staying dead than Dagmar did not appearing at the end of a season. I was willing to forgive it though, because Zog's scene with his bear son was the most heartbreaking and probably one of my favorite scenes in this season. If they keep doing this shit though, I don't think I can continue to be so forgiving. Also, bring up negatives, why not? I hate the puppet. No, just flat out. I don't know why they brought him back. I don't care what his deal is, why this guy is suddenly alive. And the only answer I'm willing to accept is that it's really just Dagmar. But the fact that he immediately gets carted off makes him seem like not a threat, so I don't think it's her. It's weird, it's out of place, and I feel like this is the middle chunk next to the sea trogs that really just like dilute that final stretch. The season also has a criminal lack of Una, one of the best characters. But Derek hitting his goth phase and bonding with Jasper almost made up for it. Almost. Enough about the show. Let's talk about the thing I actually care about. Bean's love life. Because Bean fucks. Not the most delicate way to put it, but the most accurate. In a show about a rebel teen princess being screwed over by the patriarchy, the question of who she's screwing is constantly being asked. Inbred's Man Pigs Beta, the show seems to be committed to making Bean's love life a recurring theme. And while some would call this sexist, as someone who has actually watched the show, I can say who Bean bumps uglies with plays a pivotal role in the show and her development. Because when a show starts with your dad trying to marry you to a chauvinist pig and ends with your mom trying to screw with your head, it officially has my attention. Throw in her banging a mermaid? Well, I guess I'm just having a good time then. Bean's relationship with Mora is just a fun cherry on top of a hell no cake. Bean had zero romantic chemistry with everyone before her. Having finally found the love of her life in part 3, only to question if it ever happened, this season not only confirms that it did happen, but then has them reunite, and honestly, I just love that for them. Maybe it's me just being happy that it's not Elfo, but with the connection mermaids have with the Dreamland Castle, I hope from now on Mora is going to have a much bigger role. It was fun to have them teased out for a season, but anything more than this would just be annoying. Bean's powers and dark side may be underdeveloped, but this was a thing that actually got me excited, as unlike everything else, it felt like it was actually moving. It felt like it was actually going to be impactful and not a repeat of what's happened in previous seasons. And I think that's just the main reason why I can just never get enough of them. Because yeah, Bean's having bad dreams, Bean is stressing about her powers, Bean is stressing about her parents. But this felt like the one thing where I'm like, yes, good for her. Let's give her something that isn't related to stress. Overall, I would call this another good season for Disenchantment. It was a little on the ropes for the first 2 parts, or seasons, or whatever the fuck they're calling it these things, but I enjoyed it, even if it didn't feel as tight as part 3. I'm not sure if this show has been renewed for another season. Futurama is coming back, so I don't know if this team will cancel the show to go back to their original baby or hand it off to a different crew. I just think it would be such a shame to see this story stop here, so I hope they get to finish it at least. Check out Disenchantment if you haven't already, witness the glory of Mop Girl getting a name, and just kick back for a low-key but good time. This has been Sarcastic Chorus. Let me know what other shows I should review, let me know what other ships I should talk about, subscribe, and all that jazz. Thanks for watching, peace out, bye.
I have a machete.